Good morning, people. Welcome back to the Dave's Diary entry. I have been interrupted 3 times this morning. One was from my courier, who we're kind of on. We know each other now. We call each other by our respective names. Anyway, I've got something. I don't know what it is, but I'll have a look at that in a minute. There's a couple of things I want to touch on. Well, number one, at least, I changed my mind. I decided that it was going to be easier to clash the back vertical panel on the miter station. So that's what I did. I had a piece of timber, and that was why it was easier. I had a piece of timber that was long enough, wide enough, etc. So I thought, hey, clash it off, put a couple of dowels in it maybe, because I do want it to be quite robust, although that glue I think is going to be more than robust enough. But nonetheless, going to clash that rather than the bottom panel. Now, onto the bottom panel. And it's looking really, really nice. It's probably not very serviceable now, but I thought because I'm going to be gluing these two panels together with the Weld Bond brand of glue, and it did bond very well, the example of which was here, and you ain't getting that apart anytime soon. I thought, well, if I give it a bit of a sand, it would give an etch to the melamine surface and it would bond all that much better. Unnecessary, but I wanted to do it, so I did. What it did do is it really cleaned up any blemishes that were in the surface. Yes, I know that's not what you do to melamine surfaces. After all, it's pre-finished. Don't touch it with a sandpaper. But I did because of the other reasoning. And what it did is it really did flush up any, it was imperceivably, I'd actually plane the timber dead it was really good. But when I sanded it, it just gave it a different feel again. So I was actually very, very impressed with that. And that's the benefit of if you're doing edging on timber to timber, that's great. But with melamine, your finishing is constrained by this. You can't really sand it easily, and you've just got to come along with a tiny wee bit of sandpaper and sand out the surface. But that. And here's the sad part of it. None of this is going to be seen anyway because they'll be sandwiched together. You will see the front, but none of this because they'll be sandwiched together. And in a cabinet situation where you also won't see it. Anyway, long story short, I was actually very impressed with that. No, I know you're not supposed to sand this, but I did it because of the glue thing. Okay, can we put that aside? Thank you. Now, the question was, mainly for consideration, a bit like this workbench, my miter station will have an area on each end for drawers, or suitable for drawers. The middle one will be, one of the boxes will be that very box there. That will go underneath the miter saw, and there'll be another one next to it, possibly a box with another circular saw in it, a new 36 volt XGT Makita saw. So that's where those two boxes are going to be, over there. On the side, I thought about having it as storage and shelves in there, or probably drawers. And I thought, hang on, maybe, just maybe, I take some of the other tools that I have dotted around here and other items like that quite chunky and heavy lathe chuck, which we have talked about in the past, but we'll put aside this morning. Man, is it windy out there today. Anyway, the typical nor'wester in Canterbury here. Anyway, do I take the tools from there and stick underneath here? After all, I have tool storage for the two saws, and then I can put some of the other items there, like grinders and blowers and maybe that lathe chuck, etc., over in that area as well. That would mean that this would become more dedicated towards storage of small stuff. This is storage for small stuff, but it might, between the two of them, be a little bit more than I need. So, do I split it off and everything down a certain height is of one type of storage, and up above that for, say, tools like my drills, which I do actually like having the batteries and chargers in one area. So there's my Makita shelf, there's my Hikoki shelf, so I've got my chargers and batteries there, and then perhaps having some often used tools up here, like the drills and grinder, which gets used quite a bit. So that was the question, do I turn the lower part or the whole thing into storage? Okay, so the question was immediately posed, how do I store all the components? Because I have a lot of this sort of stuff that fits into these sorts of containers, more or less. So if I keep on buying, and this is the point of this particular video, or what kicked it off, at least in my own mind, if I bought another one of these, $19, or another one of these, $25, and I put it on a pull-out shelf or drawer situation, they're $23 each of these bearing slides. All of a sudden it's the slider plus the container. Ouch. That gets expensive as you use more of them. What say I just use these type of runners? Well, they're about $14 to $16. So they're half to two-thirds the price of a bearing slider anyway. And they're not as ideal or not as nice as the bearing sliders. In my opinion, they're okay, but, and these were second-hand anyway. I don't know how many years of use they'd had, and some of them work well, some of them work less well, as evidenced by the angle of the front roller. If they're angled, you've got the potential for it being a problem. Strangely enough, that works not too bad. Not bad. Not bad. Not good. It just drags. It may be that that's sized wrong. Who knows? Anyway, that was not the point. I watched a video, and this chap printed a whole lot of these sorts of containers. I mean, a whole lot. And it's like 450 or 480 containers or some such. And I don't have a 3D printer. What I do have is a sense of the economy or economics of something, and a lot of offcuts to make drawers out of. What say I go the route of making up a drawer, putting a slide on it, which is the equivalent of one of these containers. So I've got the slide, which is a bonus, and then I can put the divisions in the, let's just get this one open, divisions into the box, not dissimilar to this, where it has a solid fixed rail here or divider here, but can have the divisions pull out that go in between those more rigid components, meaning I can start out with a box of this size, pull that one out or those two out, and I have the flexibility that way. I like that idea, but I'd also like the idea of having these more rigid ones also pull outable and even turn roundable, if you know what I mean. So these can go both ways. So ideally the boxes would be square-ish to accommodate that. That does have a lot of appeal, but they're fixed in place. You have to go and get the items out of the container rather than being able to take the container to where you want to go. Also, you can do this. retain some of your containers, pull some out, and put in the item that you want. Now that would be able to be facilitated by that approach, having the more rigid dividers also removable or changeable, with the other lighter type of divider also being able to be moved in and out. Then there's these sorts of containers. These are readily available here where I am, so you have to choose your type of container, and they kind of can be embedded into they bed into each other. Only two will fit in there because of whatever reasoning the manufacturers didn't make it 3, and they are roughly the same height. They're not the same width, etc. But there you go. So that is an option as well. I've got a few of those dotted around the place, and by the time I start to develop up my thinking, do I make my drawers deep enough to pointing camera. You're going to have a word with the producer, the director, or whoever, anyway. I tend to point the camera in the general direction, but sometimes the gimbal and me don't agree. Anyway, do I make the drawer size to take these? The answer is, well, at least 1 or 2. And the depth, or multiples of them, the answer is, kind of makes sense. And then if that fits a kind of like a unit size, now these ones I started to do a modelling exercise in SketchUp, because I'm kind of anticipating redoing this entire cabinet and that one to a degree. These were 100 by just under the 145. So let's just say they're 100 by 150. These are 100 by 100, and they're 100 high. So you can say that's a 100 millimeter cube, or a 4-inch cube. These are 120 to 125. It wouldn't take much to make all the boxes capable of taking these, a number of boxes able to take some of these, but that would force you into locating them in a position. Would it be better to forego using these type of boxes and just simply make divisions in your container? But it is really nice to be able to do that. Really nice. And this sort of thing would be, well, make them 2 of these wide, 2 of these deep, so you're back to a square box of a multiple of this there, thereabouts. Remembering we've also got the thickness of the panels to consider. Anyway, all of those thoughts come about because I watched a video. I like the idea of making the box because of effectively the scraps or the offcuts of my melamine can be made into a box. So the cost of a slider is kind of like mitigated or compensated because you didn't buy another one of these. These are really handy. You pick them up, you move them to where you want, but 9 times out of 10 it's only 1 or 2 items in it that you're actually thinking about. Like, I need to have a 6mm pin and a 6mm dowel. Well, they need to be in the same same box or drawer, but I can simply pull that out, and that out, and take with me to where I'm working. So that's the thinking, at least, or the starting of how to unitize the whole drawer situation, storage, because while I'm not ready to do it there, I'm kind of starting to think there is a good place for that sort of storage. Or do I set, and these are the questions, or do we just set this up to store tools? and have this more allocated to the storage itself. That kind of has its own sense, makes its own sense. There is a lathe chuck that I use on the drill press to centre items. So that is not ideally suited there. That's a container for a small drill. That's kind of okay because it's with the other drills if I leave them there. Or do I put all of those drills, etc., up here? That does seem to make as much sense as anything, keeping everything in a general area. So, decisions. Rightio, not much more than that, but that's significant enough, I suppose, in itself for me. Let's have a look at what has arrived. So I'm going to put you down and go quiet for a bit while I go find a craft knife to open things up with, so don't go away. Oh, you didn't go away. Well, that's jolly convenient. What have we got here? Got no idea. I've got so many different ideas that I'm coming up with to make my life a little bit easier. I think that I can't keep track of them, so they the components come at all different stages because I've ordered them at all different times, and another couple of days and we should have the laser cut steel plates for the 345 method. Aha. These are a bush or a item that, depending upon the accuracy, may or may not be a bit of a boon for us. Let's just have a look and you'll see what I'm meaning very quickly. No doubt other people have thought the same sort of thing. Zeroed out. Oh, yes, like it. I like it. 19.95. So that is almost a friction fit in a hole. It's probably as good a dog as a comparison to a dog, a bench dog. That's me. As I've got here, I'll try and keep them in shot. There's a bench dog. Just got these the other day for the exactly same reason, but 19.96. These are identical. These both have an 8mm thread in them. The idea for that is I can either use an 8mm thread like this to wind in, and I can use this inserted into a hole for tying down or jacking up, depending how I can make this fit. That doesn't mean to say clamping down or anything, but holding down or locating. But I've got a better chance of this being accurately machined than probably me doing it because I don't have a lathe. And it's already got the 8mm thread in it. Because when I go to do the 345ing method, I want to be able to have an 8mm bolt with a tiny little center mark in it so that I can screw it. Put it this way, I can make 20mm holes. I can put this back into said 20mm holes, put my blank in there of the 8mm rod thread, and the center point there will allow an accurate relocating point. Look, you don't have to worry about it. That's my my paranoia kicking in, and I'm trying to get ahead of the issues before they come about. But that tolerance, not bad. Also, in an 18, don't know whether you can see, but in an 18mm thick top, these stick out by whatever amount the length it is, and becomes the bench dog. And you can see the possibility of sticking things in here for other uses. Well, that was the thinking, at least, for that. So that's a few of those, and I think this is not a dissimilar type of thing, because I don't necessarily know, I don't know what I'm talking about. Where did you go? Why don't you look this way? Okay, I don't really know whether one idea will work better than another. So, geez, I know how to pack those well. And this was just a different supplier supplying the same thing, because not always is it's effectively the same thing. So I've more than doubled up there. 19.83 compared to 19.93. So that tenth of a mil difference. This being better than this. This being cheaper than this. So we'll see. And they still act as, oops, I'll pick this up. And they still act as bench dogs. So there's not much downside for me in that regard. I can't remember how much they cost. Hopefully they're cheaper than the bench dogs themselves, which would be just a nice additional benefit. But they have the facility of having a thread inserted into them for whatever jig purposes that I might put them to. And I have an idea for some jigs that will need to be built, and that will allow the use of these to be made use of for the jigs, which will have preset but customizable angles on them for when we're clamping up odd things on our workbench. Dead simple, really easy to build in the workshop at the drop of a hat. So there may be a really oddball angle that we need. Well, we can do that on the miter saw with bench dog holes built into that panel. So not much of a downside there, with a lot of upside, I would suggest. So there you go, that's what we've got there. I was waiting for those just to have a wee bit of a fiddle. Now that I know that the tolerances aren't too bad, remembering I can improve the tolerance by giving it a bit of a scuff, stick the stick a threaded rod on it in the drill. I can spin it as I spray coat it, and the couple of microns for each coat would soon build up to make the tolerance quite nice in the hole. Thank you very much. So it will make up that small discrepancy that is necessary for bench dogs. These locate quite nicely because of the shoulder, or they feel quite stable because of the shoulder, but they've still got a certain amount of slop in them, and that's where those very expensive ones with the O-rings on it that you can tighten up, they swell and take up the difference. That's where they work particularly well. These aren't them. These are cheap. They're not them, but by putting a few microns of paint on them, you want something that's going to have a wee bit of like fairly tough, and by spraying it, you've taken up that inbuilt tolerance that they've come with. So yay. Even thought about doing it to these are anodized, but a couple of coats of paint on that will take up that tiny little slot, because I want that threaded section to be as accurately placed in the holes as possible. Excessive? Maybe. Necessary? Well, I didn't suggest it without I thinking it being necessary. Or beneficial. Is it beneficial? Yes. But the paint will scratch off, David. Oh, well, paint the damn things again. Duh. So, yeah, all of these tiny little items are being assembled and need storage somewhere, because the worst thing you can have in a workshop is the knowledge that you've got something like this and not find the damn things. And they just go over there. It's like it's alternative realities over there. You just don't know what you're going to find. If it was there today, it's not there tomorrow. You think, well, how did that happen? So anyway, I do waffle. Happy with those. Happier with those, because that's actually quite a nice tolerance, thanks very much. And yeah, and coming up with an approach for all the storage capabilities that these different units are making for me. So, right, that's it. Third time lucky. Okay, we'll see you in the next one now. Bye.